Bryce Coleman looked me straight in the eye and said, "Pack your things. You're fired." I stood there in the conference room, surrounded by my team, our biggest clients, and the Pinnacle Industries executives who'd flown in from 3 time zones to sign the most important deal in Coleman Industries history. Everyone was staring at me, then at Bryce, then back at me, trying to process what they'd just heard. "Excuse me?" I said, keeping my voice level despite the shock. "You heard me." Bryce straightened his tie, clearly enjoying the moment. "Your appearance is unacceptable for an executive presentation. No jacket, no respect. This meeting is over. I'm Nolan Pierce, 49 years old, and in that moment I was watching 25 years of my professional life about to go down the drain because the CEO's 30-year-old son had decided my shirt sleeves were a bigger priority than our $1.2 billion merger. Wade Foster from Pinnacle Industries looked like someone had just told him Christmas was canceled. His legal team, his investment bankers, his senior executives, they all had that expression you get when you witness something so unprofessional that you're not sure if you should laugh or call security. "Bryce," I said carefully, "we're 15 minutes away from signing the biggest deal in this company's history. Whatever issue you have with my appearance, can we discuss it after?" "No, we cannot." He was practically trembling with authority. "I've reviewed our employee handbook. Professional attire requires a jacket during all executive meetings. You're in violation of company policy." The irony hit me like a punch to the gut. That employee handbook? My late wife Sarah had helped write the original version 15 years ago when she worked in HR here. She'd specifically included language about professional appearance within reasonable accommodation for individual comfort and work requirements. Bryce had either never read the full policy or was choosing to ignore it. "This is insane," Wade said, standing up from the conference table. "Nolan, what's happening here?" I looked around the room. Jennifer Coleman, our CEO and Bryce's mother, sat at the head of the table saying absolutely nothing. The other executives, people I'd worked alongside for years, people who knew exactly what this deal meant for our company, they all just sat there like deer in headlights. "Apparently I'm being terminated for not wearing a jacket," I said, my voice carrying further than I intended. Wade's entire team started exchanging looks. These were serious business people who'd spent months on due diligence, legal reviews, and regulatory approvals. They'd restructured their financing, gotten board approval, and cleared their calendars for what was supposed to be a celebration lunch after signing. "You're firing your lead negotiator?" Wade asked Bryce directly, "the man who structured this entire deal?" "He's not following company policy," Bryce replied, but I could hear his voice starting to waver as the reality of the situation began dawning on him. "Standards matter." "Standards?" Wade looked around the room like he was taking inventory of everyone present. "The standard I care about is competence. Nolan built this deal from scratch. He understood what both companies needed. He negotiated terms that work for everyone." He paused, letting that sink in. "And you're throwing that away because he's not wearing a jacket?" I felt something shift in my chest. For 3 years, I'd put everything into this merger. I'd worked weekends, missed family dinners, canceled vacations. I'd built relationships, navigated egos, and structured a deal that would save Coleman Industries from the financial trouble they'd been hiding from their shareholders. I'd done all of this while still grieving Sarah, still trying to figure out how to live without the woman who'd been my partner in everything for 20 years. And now this kid, this entitled little prince who'd never closed a deal bigger than his country club membership, was destroying it all because of a dress code. "Actually," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded, "let me make this easy for everyone." I started gathering my papers from the conference table. Bryce is absolutely right. I'm not following company policy as he understands it. And since he clearly has the authority to make this decision, and his mother supports it with her silence, I accept it. "Nolan, wait!" Jennifer finally spoke up, but it was too late. Wade was already pulling out his phone, scrolling to something. "Actually, before anyone goes anywhere, let me read you something." He found what he was looking for. Page 23, Section 6 of our merger agreement. There's a key person clause. Nolan Pierce is specifically named as essential to this transaction. If he leaves Coleman Industries before closing for any reason other than documented illness or death, Pinnacle Industries has the right to withdraw from this agreement without penalty. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "That clause was Nolan's idea," Jennifer said quietly. "He insisted on it to protect the deal if something happened to him." "Well," Wade said, snapping his phone shut, "something just happened to him. And I'm not comfortable doing a $1.2 billion deal with a company that fires their key executives over clothing choices. He stood up and his entire team followed suit. This merger is off. I walked toward the door, my papers tucked under my arm, ignoring Jennifer's increasingly desperate calls for everyone to just sit down and work this out. As I reached the conference room exit, Wade caught my arm. "Nolan," he said quietly, "when you figure out what's next for you, call me. Talent like yours is rare, and companies that recognize it are even rarer." The elevator ride down to the lobby gave me my first moment alone to process what had just happened. In 30 minutes, Bryce Coleman had managed to destroy more value than most companies generate in a decade. The kid had cost his mother's company its survival, thousands of jobs, and millions in shareholder value, all because he couldn't handle seeing an executive in shirt sleeves. As the doors opened to the marble lobby, I realized something that surprised me. Despite having no job, no immediate prospects, and no idea what came next, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief. For the first time since Sarah died, I was free to decide what really mattered to me. Outside, the spring air hit me like a revelation. When was the last time I'd walked out of Coleman Industries before dark? When had I last noticed that the dogwood trees in the parking lot were actually blooming? My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails from colleagues who'd already heard the news. The Coleman Industries rumor mill had always been efficient, but this was record time. I turned the phone off without reading any of them. Whatever crisis was unfolding back in that irritating conference room wasn't mine to solve anymore. The drive home gave me time to think about what had actually just happened. Bryce Coleman, in his infinite wisdom, had just taught Wade Foster and his entire team exactly what kind of company they'd almost partnered with. He'd shown them a place where arbitrary authority mattered more than competence, where family connections trumped professional judgment, where 25 years of experience could be dismissed by a 30-year-old with a fancy degree in daddy issues. At home, I did something I hadn't done on a weekday in probably 5 years. I poured myself a bourbon at 3 p.m. and sat on the back deck that Sarah had designed, but I'd barely had time to enjoy. The garden she'd planted was coming back to life after winter, proof that beautiful things could survive even when you stopped paying attention to them. My neighbor Frank was working in his yard next door, and he waved when he saw me. "Playing hooky today?" he called over. "Something like that," I said, more like early retirement. He walked over to the fence that separated our properties. Frank was a good guy, a plumber who'd built his own business from nothing and understood the value of hard work. "Everything okay, Nolan? You look like someone who just got some news." I found myself laughing, which surprised both of us. "I got fired today, Frank. 25 years with the same company, and I got fired because I wasn't wearing a jacket." Frank's expression shifted from casual concern to genuine outrage. "Are you serious? A jacket? What is this, 1955? Apparently dress codes are more important than closing deals these days." "Well," Frank said, leaning on the fence, "speaking as someone who's never worn a tie to work in his life, that sounds like the stupidest reason I've ever heard to fire anybody." He paused, studying my face. "But you don't look upset about it." He was right. I should have been furious or scared or at least worried about my future. Instead, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. That evening, the news alerts started rolling in. Coleman Industries, merger collapses, stock plunges 35% in after-hours trading, Pinnacle Industries withdraws from billion-dollar deal. By morning, it would be down another 15% as the full implications became clear. The business press was having a field day. Sources close to the negotiations report that Coleman Industries terminated their lead negotiator on the day of signing over a dress code violation. Industry analysts questioned the leadership and decision-making processes at Coleman Industries. Pinnacle Industries CEO Wade Foster declined to comment but confirmed that the merger has been permanently abandoned. I felt a pang thinking about the good people at Coleman who would suffer because of this. Janet in accounting, who always remembered everyone's birthday. Rick in operations, who'd been there longer than I had and was 2 years from retirement. These weren't the people who'd sat silently while Bryce destroyed me. These were folks who just wanted to do their jobs and take care of their families. But the truth was, I hadn't failed them. Their leadership had. For the next week, I ignored my phone completely. I let everything go to voicemail. Colleagues, reporters, headhunters, former clients, everyone wanted to know what had happened and what I planned to do next. The honest answer was that I didn't know, and for the first time in decades, that felt okay. Instead, I did things I'd forgotten I enjoyed. I slept 8 hours a night without setting an alarm. I cooked actual meals instead of grabbing takeout on my way home from the office at 9 p.m. I read books that weren't related to business strategy or market analysis. I called my brother Quentin in Phoenix, something I'd been promising to do more often since our father's funeral 2 years ago. "You sound different," Quentin said during our second conversation that week. "Relaxed. When's the last time we talked and you weren't stressed about some deal or some client crisis?" "I can't remember," I admitted, looking out at my backyard where I was discovering all sorts of things Sarah had planted that I'd never had time to notice. "You know what Sarah used to say about you?" Quentin asked. "She said you were the smartest guy she knew when it came to business, but you'd forgotten that there was more to life than just business." That hit harder than I expected. Sarah had been gone for 3 years now, cancer taking her way too early, and I'd thrown myself into work as a way to avoid dealing with the grief. Maybe that's why the firing felt more like liberation than disaster. "She was right," I said, "about a lot of things. Remember that employee handbook she worked on at your company? She was so proud of that project. Said it was about treating people with dignity at work, making sure everyone felt respected regardless of their position or background." I did remember. Sarah had spent months on that handbook, interviewing employees at every level, researching best practices, crafting policies that balanced professionalism with humanity. She'd been particularly proud of the dress code section, which emphasized appropriateness and respect while avoiding rigid, arbitrary rules. "Bryce Coleman probably never read past the first page," I said. "Well, maybe it's time someone reminded him what his own company is supposed to stand for." 2 weeks into my unexpected vacation, Jennifer finally managed to reach me. I'd been screening calls, but curiosity got the better of me when I saw her personal cell number. "Nolan," her voice was tired, strained. "We need to talk." "Do we?" "The board wants to meet with you. The situation here is—" She paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "It's much worse than we initially anticipated." "Much worse." I almost laughed. "Worse how? Stocks down 50%? Clients are jumping ship? Employees are updating their resumes?" "All of that," she said quietly. "And more. 3, major clients have announced they're reviewing their contracts with us. 2 board members have called for emergency leadership reviews. The press is calling us a case study in corporate dysfunction. And you need my help. Please, Nolan. Thousands of jobs are at stake here. People who worked alongside you for years. People who respect you and your work. People who sat silently while I was humiliated," I thought. But I kept that observation to myself. "What exactly are you offering?" I asked instead. "Come to the board meeting tomorrow. We'll discuss terms. You can essentially name your price." By morning, I had my answer, and it was bigger than any price they might be willing to pay. I called Jennifer back at 7 a.m. sharp. "I'll meet with your board," I said. "But not tomorrow. Today, this afternoon. And I'm coming with conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "The kind that ensure this never happens to anyone else again. And the kind that make sure I never have to worry about some entitled kid undermining 25 years of professional relationships because he doesn't like my wardrobe choices." There was a long pause. "Okay, 2 p.m. Perfect. And Jennifer?" "I'll be wearing exactly the same outfit I was fired in. I hope that won't be a problem for anyone." 4 hours later, I walked into the Coleman Industries boardroom wearing khakis, a dress shirt, and deliberately no jacket. If the message wasn't clear enough, I'd also brought something else. A framed photo of Sarah that I placed on the table in front of me. She'd taken it in our backyard the spring before she got sick, surrounded by the garden she'd designed and the employee handbook project she'd just finished. The board members rose when I entered, which was interesting. 2 weeks ago, these same people had sat in stony silence while Bryce humiliated me. Now they were standing like I was some kind of visiting dignitary. Their expressions ranged from desperate hope to barely concealed panic. Jennifer looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes, coffee-stained blouse, the kind of exhaustion that comes from watching your life's work crumble in real time. Bryce was notably absent from the room. "Thank you for coming, Nolan," the chairman said. Robert Walsh, a guy who'd been on the board for about 8 years but had never said more than hello to me before this crisis. "We really appreciate your willingness to discuss the situation." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I replied, taking my seat at the table where I'd presented quarterly reports dozens of times over the years. "In the 2 weeks since I left, your stock has fallen 52%. 4 major clients have announced they're reviewing their contracts with Coleman Industries. The business press is running daily speculation about when you'll file for bankruptcy or be acquired at fire sale prices. Uncomfortable shifting around the table." A few board members exchanged nervous glances. "You've lost the Pinnacle merger, which was your last realistic chance at avoiding serious restructuring. Even if I could somehow convince Wade Foster to reconsider, and that's a big if, the terms would be substantially worse now. Pinnacle holds all the leverage. We understand the gravity of the situation," Jennifer said. She sounded older than I remembered, like stress was aging her in real time. "But we have to try something." "Do you?" I asked, looking around the table and meeting each person's eyes. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already made your choice. You chose Bryce's authority over business relationships. You chose dress code compliance over a $1.2 billion deal. You chose silence over defending the person who'd spent 3 years orchestrating your salvation." The room went quiet except for the air conditioning humming overhead. "Every single one of you was in that conference room 2 weeks ago," I continued. "Not one of you spoke up. Not one of you questioned what was happening. You sat there and watched your colleague get destroyed by a 30-year-old with a fancy degree and family connections, and you did nothing. More uncomfortable shifting." The chairman cleared his throat. "We made a terrible mistake," he admitted. "A catastrophic error in judgment. What would it take for you to consider returning?" I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder my attorney had helped me prepare the night before. "These terms are non-negotiable," I said, placing it in front of him. His eyebrows rose as he read the first page. He passed it to Jennifer, whose face went pale, then to the other board members. I watched their expressions change as they absorbed what I was asking for. "This is extensive," Jennifer said finally. "Yes, full reinstatement as senior vice president at double my previous salary, a permanent seat on this board of directors, complete autonomy over all strategic decisions related to mergers, acquisitions, and major client relationships, a substantial equity stake in Coleman Industries." I paused, letting that sink in, and a public statement acknowledging the error in my termination, along with a commitment to revise company policies to prevent arbitrary enforcement of subjective standards. "Double salary seems excessive," one board member objected. "Does it?" I replied. "How much was Coleman Industries worth 2 weeks ago compared to today? How much would successful completion of the Pinnacle merger have been worth to shareholders? I'm essentially asking for a small percentage of the value that was destroyed when you let Bryce fire me." Robert read further into the document. "This clause about new business ventures. You want majority ownership of any new initiatives you develop while employed here. 65% ownership for me, 35% for Coleman Industries on any projects I launch using company time or resources. All arrangements to be documented and compensated appropriately. Consider it insurance against future misunderstandings about whose judgment matters more, mine or whoever happens to be the CEO's relative." I could see the silent conversation happening around the table. Glances, slight nods, barely perceptible head shakes. They were calculating whether Coleman Industries was worth more with me at these terms or without me at any price. "There's one more thing," I said, touching the photo of Sarah. "I want to establish a workplace dignity initiative funded by company profits to ensure that no employee here ever faces the kind of arbitrary humiliation I experienced. It'll be called the Sarah Pierce Professional Standards Program." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. She remembered Sarah, remembered how much the original employee handbook had meant to her. "Sarah believed that workplaces should honor both professionalism and humanity," I continued. "She believed that standards should serve people, not the other way around. This program will provide training, mediation, and support for any employee who faces unreasonable or discriminatory treatment." Finally, Robert spoke. "If we agree to these terms, you'll attempt to salvage the Pinnacle relationship? I'll try. I can't promise success." The relationship damage is significant, and Wade Foster is a smart businessman who now knows exactly what kind of decision-making process exists here. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Another round of silent board member communication. Robert picked up a pen. Done. He signed the contract. One by one, the other board members followed suit. Jennifer was last, her pen hovering over the signature line for a long moment before she added her name. "When can you start?" Robert asked. "I already have," I said, standing up. "I'll be in my old office making calls. But first, I want to see Bryce. He's been reassigned to a junior position in research and development," Jennifer said quietly. "Perfect. I think it's time he and I had a conversation about professional standards." I found Bryce in a cramped office in the research department, a far cry from the executive suite where he'd wielded his authority 2 weeks earlier. He looked up when I knocked, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine remorse. "Nolan," he said, standing awkwardly. "I heard you were back." "I am." Different terms this time, though. I sat down across from his desk, noticing the stack of employee handbooks he'd been reading. "Catching up on company policy?" His face reddened. "I've been going through the full handbook, the real one, not just the summary I was given." He picked up one of the books. "I found the section your wife wrote about professional appearance standards." I waited. "It says appearance should be appropriate and respectful, but should accommodate individual work requirements and comfort within professional bounds." He looked down at the page. It specifically mentions that rigid adherence to arbitrary standards can undermine both productivity and employee dignity. "Sarah spent months researching that policy," I said. "She interviewed everyone from janitors to executives. She wanted to create standards that served people, not the other way around." "I cost the company over $400 million in market value because I never read past page 1, Bryce said quietly. "And I cost you your job because I was more interested in showing authority than understanding what authority is actually for." It was the first honest thing I'd heard him say. "What are you going to do with that knowledge?" I asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm hoping you might teach me." Over the next month, I worked to stabilize what could be saved while pursuing an idea that had been forming since that first day back. During my conversations with Wade Foster, trying to rebuild the Pinnacle relationship, I kept thinking about what had really caused this crisis. It wasn't just Bryce's immaturity or the company's dysfunction. It was the broader problem of workplace cultures that valued appearance over substance, authority over competence. That's when Executive Edge was born. "I need a small team for a side project," I told our head of product development over lunch. "Something experimental, professional menswear that adapts to different workplace cultures." He looked intrigued. "That's not our industry." "No, but it's a market with real problems that need solving, and my new contract gives me the freedom to explore new ventures." Within a week, I had 4 people working evenings and weekends on designs that could solve the daily challenge professional men face, looking appropriate for any situation without having to guess what arbitrary standards they might encounter. We started with versatile suits that could transition from boardroom formal to business casual with simple adjustments, shirts with convertible collars, jackets with subtle removable elements. The goal was simple: no more anxiety about dress codes, no more buying multiple wardrobes for different workplace cultures. I began wearing our prototypes to work, and people noticed. Colleagues started asking where I shopped. Clients commented on the professional but comfortable appearance. Most importantly, I never again had to worry about whether some arbitrary authority figure would approve of my clothing choices. 6 months later, Executive Edge was ready for launch. The marketing wrote itself. We told the true story. A seasoned executive fired over dress code compliance launches a company dedicated to professional clothing that honors both standards and individual dignity. The day before our public launch, I called a company-wide meeting at Coleman Industries. Everyone attended, including Bryce, who'd been working his way back up through genuine effort and humility. 1 year ago, I was fired for not wearing a jacket, I began, demonstrating the adaptability of our latest design. Today, I want to talk about what we've built from that moment. The financial projections made several executives sit up straight. Executive Edge had generated $2.3 million in pre-orders before even launching. We had manufacturing partnerships across North Carolina, distribution agreements with major retailers, and a marketing strategy built on authentic storytelling. Thanks to my employment contract granting majority ownership of new ventures developed here, Executive Edge operates independently with Coleman Industries retaining 35% ownership, I announced. All development costs have been properly compensated and documented. The launch exceeded every projection. Business press coverage focused on both our innovation and our origin story. Fired over a tie. How one executive turned workplace humiliation into professional innovation became a viral headline across industry publications. Orders overwhelmed our initial inventory. Professional men across industries responded not just to the practical designs, but to the message behind them. That competence should matter more than compliance. That professional standards should serve dignity rather than arbitrary authority. 3 months after launch, Executive Edge had generated $8.7 million in revenue. We expanded into accessories, workplace essentials, and consulting services for companies wanting to develop more thoughtful professional standards. Each piece maintained our core philosophy: professional adaptability without compromising dignity. More importantly, the success attracted Wade Foster's attention again. "I wear Executive Edge suits now," he told a business reporter. "Best professional wear I've owned, and I respect supporting a company that values substance over superficial compliance." That interview led to renewed conversations about the Coleman-Pinnacle merger. Different terms, smaller scale, but built on rebuilt trust and respect. On the anniversary of my firing, I called one final company meeting. The atmosphere was celebratory rather than tense. "1 year ago, I was fired for not wearing a jacket," I said, "wearing our latest design. Today, Executive Edge employs 47 people, has generated $12 million in revenue, and Coleman Industries' 35% stake has become its most valuable asset outside our core business." I announced the Sarah Pierce Professional Standards Program had mediated 23 workplace disputes, providing training and support that prevented arbitrary enforcement of subjective policies. More importantly, it had helped transform Coleman's culture into something Sarah would have recognized and approved of. After the meeting, Bryce approached me. "The fellowship program you mentioned," he said. "I've been working on an application." "The review process is thorough," I said. "No special treatment." "I understand. I just want to become someone different than I was." 2 months later, Bryce was accepted into our leadership development program. His message was simple: "Thank you for the opportunity to be more than my worst moment." Today, Executive Edge continues growing beyond anything I projected. But the real success isn't the revenue or the press coverage, it's the emails from customers saying they no longer stress about workplace dress codes. It's the companies that have adopted Sarah's principles for professional standards. It's knowing that arbitrary authority has one less weapon to wield against competence and dignity. Sometimes the most powerful response to someone trying to make you smaller is growing so large they can't help but stand in your shadow. Whether that shadow darkens or enlightens depends entirely on your choice. My choice was to build something Sarah would have been proud of. Something that serves people rather than power, that honors both professionalism and humanity. That, more than any revenge, feels like victory. True professional power isn't about enforcing arbitrary rules. It's about building something so valuable that people respect your judgment over their own convenience. The best revenge against those who underestimate your worth isn't proving them wrong. It's building a legacy so meaningful that their opinion becomes irrelevant.
I'm freezing. I'm bleeding. Slowly fading away. But don't worry. I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay. Oh, oh, oh. Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection, now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow, I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling, I'll learn to breathe again. Begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me To rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone